John 5. When we hear of Jesus being in Jerusalem, as we do in this story, we should be prepared for words of contention. In other words, he's usually dealing with people who don't believe in him when he gets down to Jerusalem. It's commonly said Galilee gave him a home, Samaria gave him belief, and Jerusalem gave him a cross. And that basically sums up how these conversations near and in Jerusalem will sound. Jesus meets a lame man by a pool outside of Jerusalem. Been there 38 years. Why has he been there? He says, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool," verse 7, "when the water is stirred up. But while I'm coming, another steps down before me." Now, archaeological discoveries have determined that this pool is dedicated, it's called Bethesda in the text, it's dedicated to the god Asclepion, the Roman god of healing. Is that possible that a god or gods were involved in this place and people could be healed? I would certainly say yes, that fits the narrative of the Bible, that gods have power and that people, when they worship them and give themselves to the worship of these gods, they can experience blessing and things. So my guess is that this is an actual story of a man wanting to be healed by another god. Jesus walks in, of course, having just defeated Satan in the wilderness. He pronounces him clean or healed on the spot. And then he has this interesting phrase, don't sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you. I would say that's a clear way of him saying, don't go back to the pool. This is idolatry. Sin no more. Do not go back to the worship of other gods, which would be experienced in the healing that they could offer. This fits what will be said later of Jesus in Acts 3:26. God sent Jesus to bless you in turning away every one of you from your iniquities. One of Jesus' roles was to help people realize that you cannot mix the worship of Yahweh and the worship of other gods, which would have been a common element of that day, especially as this pool is right outside the temple, dedicated to the god Asclepion by Herod the Great, by the way. He was a notorious idolater. Well, our text gives us a verse that has spawned a lot of discussion. Therefore the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he not only broke the Sabbath, this whole thing was done on Sabbath, remember, but also because he said God was his Father, making himself equal with God. And so here's the challenge. We often get into the discussion of the relationship of Yahweh and Jesus using words like person, substance, essence, and so forth. The problem, a lot of these, of course, are English, well, they all are, but they're based in Latin. And hardly any of them are based in talking through the Greek and the Hebrew text, of course, that we have in front of us. I would recommend, of course, dealing with the text, which we'll do in a moment. Let me first, though, read a little bit from Craig Keener, the Gospel of John, about this story. The issue is not calling God Father in the general sense, as this was a title for God in Judaism and for the supreme deity among many pagans as well. The issue is that he calls him his Father in a way unique to himself, implying something more than solidarity with the Jewish people. Rather than understanding him as God's agent, however, they characteristically misunderstood him, assuming that he claims equality with the Father. That would have been blasphemous. Equal to God is a close equivalent of a later rabbinic phrase meaning to make oneself independent from God, similar to a phrase applied to a son who casts off the yoke of his parents. I'm equal to my parent in the sense that I can do what they do without their involvement, is the point. Jesus denies equality of rank with his Father in his ensuing response in the verses that I'll be quoting in just a moment from John 5. He does not make himself God, this is jumping around in his commentary, but by the Father's decree is the Father's co-creator of both the first and future creations. Jesus is not claiming rank equal with the Father, but rather that he acts in obedience and on delegated authority. From John's standpoint, Jesus is full deity. Now that's where I would... The word full I don't think is necessary because, like pregnant, you're either pregnant or not, you're either deity or not. In other words, the word full, I think people use that term to designate capital G version, but it doesn't really make sense in our discussion of Greek and Hebrew. Jesus is deity, true, John 1:1, John 1:18. But he also submits to the Father, whose rank is greater than his own, John 10:29. Thus Jesus does not claim equality of rank, Philippians 2:6. Ancients understood the principle of deferring honor to those to whom it belonged. Judaism had proved especially zealous for God's honor, and so does Jesus. So let me read some of the verses as we close that are in John 5, verses 19 to 30, some amazing verses that just help us. If we're not going to use these words to define the relationship between Jesus and Yahweh, how would we do it? And by the way, again, these are words of contention said to people who don't believe in him. And so my guess would be, if we were sitting around a campfire at night and asked Jesus, so how are you related to Yahweh? That would have been a great conversation to record, but we don't have it. So what we have are words here said as polemical argument, which is always dangerous to get theology out of polemics, right? John 5:19, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he sees the Father do, for whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. Verse 30, I can do nothing of myself, as I hear I judge, and my judgment is righteous because I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father. So I think he's very clear here. He does not do his own will, he does the will of Yahweh. John 5:20, for the Father loves the Son. Again, a very powerful opening line here in this whole discussion to me of how these two relate, is that the Father loves the Son and shows him all things that he himself does. That ties into verse 26 and 7. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son to have life in himself and has given him authority to execute judgment also. So the love of Yahweh causes him to give authority to Jesus. Excuse me. So that, notice how they relate then. Jesus says, I do the will of the Father, and the Father has given me authority to grant life. Excuse me. The main point, though, that we come up with is, let's use this man as an example once he is healed, or even before, verse 23. This is where we all have to come to agreement, no matter what we do with these kind of words. Verse 23, that all should honor the Son just as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. So at least we know this much, and with this we can finish our thoughts on John 5. But the role of this lame man and me and you is that we honor the Son just as we honor the Father.